My mother described me as paralyzed from the waist down. But in certain transcripts, there is quadriplegic, paraplegic. So it is, I'm like, there's a difference in the
It's all over the place.
So if
It's
you're
a
a
giant
doctor,
mess.
my eyes would be looking at that and automatically want to correct what's wrong. So it's like the medical records are basically scattered to the wind in inaccuracy, and it's so hard to piece together any sort of sense.
Well, she's going doctor to doctor.
Doctor to doctor. He did not transfer them to one hospital to another.
Right.
So when the new doctor would ask for old records, she would claim that they were all, washed away in Hurricane Katrina, because back in 2005, there was still that transfer from hard.
This I will tell you from previous jobs in healthcare. At that time, oddly, it's so crazy to think so, but not all these records in hospitals and information was on the computers yet. A lot of them were still being done by hand in books. And I don't think that much was transferred into computer systems and files yet until like 2013, maybe.
Copy records to computer.
Even now, I think that they still struggle with that, right? Like I moved from Pennsylvania to Delaware, and my doctors were asking for records, and I was like, I don't have those.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's sort of easy to lose the paper trail. So your mom would drug herself to sleep sometimes.
She's prescribed Ambien.
Right. So not abusing it necessarily.
Right, not abusing it.
When she would go to sleep, I know that in parts of the book you talked about still being in your wheelchair, but were there ever times that you did get out of your wheelchair and walk while she was asleep?
There would be times. So like if she had to go run an errand,
Ooh,
there was times as I got older,
right,
that I did want to stretch my legs and get out of the wheelchair. And so, some of the most freeing times that I had was I would play CDs on the boombox and just.
So how much did she know, and how long did she know?
Dance.
Yeah.
That was my freedom.
Did she know that you were doing that?
She didn't. She did not, because I would be in trouble for walking even inside the house.
Oh, wow. So then did you lose muscle mass in your legs because you were in the wheelchair so much, or no?
I didn't lose muscle mass. No, because I still, like, every once in a while I would move my legs here and there, not meaning to, but she would have to correct me and be like, stop moving your legs.
At what point did you realize that you were not actually needing the wheelchair? Like, how old do you think you were?
I mean, I always knew that I could walk, and I've always been honest about that, but it was, and this goes right into the title.
That's a little conflicting, I think. Because in the past, I'm pretty sure she claimed that she didn't know until the very end of things. And then she was angry with her mother for not telling her the truth. I don't know. This is weird.
To have the word stand in the title is because, yes, I knew that I could walk. However, my mom didn't let me get out of the chair. So it was like I was forced to be in the chair.
That is so wild. I can't imagine. And it has to be, obviously don't want to speak ill of the dead, right? But like that has to be mental illness. As a mom, I can't imagine, doing these things to my own child, let alone any child. But there has to be something deeper there. And I wish that we had more answers as far as that goes.
Absolutely. That's where I feel like, maybe in a sense the system failed her.
Yeah.
And the way we grew up in Southern Louisiana, particularly in my family, we don't talk about mental health.
Right.
Growing up in the 90s, it wasn't really talked about.
Right.
You're either labeled weird or just different,
crazy.
Like those are the terms that
unfortunately
grew up with in the 90s.
Right.
And sadly, she would have needed therapy. She would have needed medication. But she didn't get those things.
Right. She couldn't have, because nobody was willing to. It's always you're crazy. And I think that raising
Stigma.
awareness about it now is also, I mean, we talk about mental health all the time, right? Like in where we are today in life, I feel like we talk about it all the time. And if they had that, it might be different.
Exactly.
But, you know, who's to say? So you meet Dan, and you still drank from a bottle at this time, and you pack the bottle to go to Dan's house. Did he already know this?
Dan.
He didn't know. I didn't tell him a lot. I didn't tell him I had a feeding tube. I didn't tell him about necessarily how weird my life was and how different.
One, she was probably embarrassed, and two, she probably wanted to impress this guy and kind of play off her dream life because she could start off as who she wants to be or who she really is with this person. They don't know everything yet.
Different it was. There was certain things that came up in conversations, like I could walk. And obviously, because I ran away that night.
Yeah.
But he was oblivious to a lot of what was going on.
And Dan was an adult that you met at a convention.
Correct.
And you guys had a romantic interest in each other?
I mean, it was I had a crush on him.
Right.
And I think he thought that I was cute, but it wasn't to the point where it was a relationship.
Okay. But you guys maybe had a little bit of an interest
Yeah.
of fling.
I was like,
I don't know. According to all the things that have come out.
36.
And he thought you were how old?
15 at the time.
So that would be a pedophile, right?
I don't like saying that word. I don't like labeling someone anything. I don't like labels put on me, so that's why I don't put labels on other people.
Fair.
That's
okay. But it's questionable.
Let's be real. She doesn't want to put him in that light because that would bring up a whole mess. And it would probably have to go into how it has been said. And there's somewhat proof that she was going after him and she kind of pushed on a relationship or wanting a relationship. So she doesn't want to get in trouble for that.
It's definitely questionable behavior. So your mom threatened to, or she did actually like out him as, you know, someone who liked children.
Correct. So once my mom brought me back home after running away and catching me with Dan, that's whenever she started to like call the people that like knew about it in a very vague way.
Okay.
And so she claimed that Dan kidnapped me, that he took me to somewhere, and that like I was safe, I was found. All the while I was chained to a bed at this time. So she's
because you ran to dance.
Because I ran to dance.
And have you had communications with?
We just have to say there is no actual solid proof that she was tied up to the bed or chained up to the bed. Gypsy has always said this, but we don't know if that's 100% true.
Dan since?
No.
Never. He's never reached out to make sure you were good and okay.
No, we had a text exchange like the day that I got arrested. And he had texted me and he's like, everybody says you're missing. Are you okay?
That was the text.
That was the text. And I never had any communication since.
He was scared. He was on parole, right? You found out that or house arrest?
It wasn't a house arrest. I think I found out that it was like probation.
Probation. Okay. And
probation and parole.
He would have gotten in trouble probably for talking to you at that point.
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Was this to Dan's where you asked the neighbor, or is this the second time that you run away?
There's also been some heavy speculation and theories that Dan was involved or included in the plotting of the unaliving of Dee Dee. But again, that is just theories and speculation.
That you get to the neighborhood and you knock on somebody random's door.
That was the first time. So that was with Dan. Yeah.
Okay. So he's in the hospital. Okay. So you just knock on some random person's door?
I did. So it was the community, the housing community that was right on the side of the Habitat for Humanity community.
Okay.
So it was literally up the street.
Okay.
And I knock on the first person's door that I see.
And you're like, I'm like,
I called him my boyfriend.
Yeah.
And I was like, my boyfriend is in the hospital. Can I get a ride?
They didn't know who you were?
They didn't know who I was. But I wore a long blonde wig. I
She
still
was
remember what I
determined.
was wearing. I had a long blonde wig. I had a oversized, like an too big of a red bra. It was like 2 sizes too big. A black tank top, jeans that were too big, and a Harry Potter hoodie.
Did they think you were on drugs?
I probably looked like I was.
Like, what did they say to you?
They're like, okay. I mean, it was a nice man. It was probably like 2:00 in the morning, and he gave me the ride. But
He took you?
yes,
And then you get to the hospital and you're like,
Oh
hey,
my.
man, what's up?
yeah.
And y'all just hung
But-
out in the hospital.
Yeah, well, he was released within 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
And so his cousin was there with him. And
Right.
so his cousin had drove us back to the friend's house that he was staying at.
Okay. And they also didn't know who you were, like what
They
your
were
story was.
asleep when
Okay.
we got there. It wasn't until the morning where the man, the husband, comes in the room and asks me my name.
Mhm.
And stupid as all I can be, I'm like, Gypsy, I'm Dan's girlfriend.
Oh my God.
Stupid.
Yeah. And then he's like, your mom's here.
Yeah, an hour later, your mom's here.
Yikes.
And you were convinced that she was going to let you continue to have a
She
friendship with Dan.
She did. She did. She's like, if you come back with me, I'll let you have a friendship with him. I'll
Girl,
let you
yeah,
see him.
right.
I'll let
You
talk
should
to
have
him."
known your
Just come
mom
back
was
with
not being
And I
serious.
believed her, and I went back with her.
And then at that point, that's before the shed incident.
Correct.
Okay. So the second attempt to escape was in 2012.
Mhm.
And what was the mindset at this time? You're like, I already had a failed escape. You go back home with your mom. She tells you can have Dan as a friend, but you were like, no, I need to escape still. Because she changed you to the bed
That was
between incidents.
yes. So I mean, that was definitely like a cracking point. Is that I never submitted, I guess you can say, fully to the idea that this was going to be my life.
This was probably also the turning point for her because she just had a little bit of a taste of reality and freedom of the outside world. And now she's back stuck in the bubble with her mom. And knowing what just happened and that she's in trouble with her mom, even though her mom was kind of baiting her, saying, oh, you could still talk to him, blah, blah, blah. Over some time, she probably realized, yeah, my mom is full of shit. And I'm on super lockdown now. So her emotions were probably so eager to get out and at the same time so mad and depressed that she was stuck back in.
So did that first attempt give you almost like a hope that you're like, okay, I didn't do this right the first time. I could do it the second time.
Exactly. I'm like, okay, well, maybe if I make certain differences. So, I pack a bag in the middle of the night. I'm going to attempt to leave to just go anywhere. Because at that point, I hadn't texted with Dan, so I had no idea where he was.
Okay.
But I was just gonna run
And just see where,
I was gonna be homeless. I didn't care what I had to do. I was just gonna go.
but that one failed as well.
It failed as well. She found my backpack.
But if she was so willing to run away, and if she really stands by that her mom was harming her to the extreme, why didn't she just go to the police herself or to that neighbor friend and say, hey, I really am scared. I don't trust the police. And even adults seem to take my mother's side on things. Please help me with this. But she always, even to that neighbor friend who she really felt a friendship with and really wanted to have her as a best friend, she stuck up for her mom. So I don't know.
And that's whenever there was a standoff, and that's whenever I shot her with the BB gun.
Okay. So that is actually the next question.
Oh, God.
Is why did your mom have the BB gun to begin with? Why did she buy that from Walmart?
So she had bought that because she had told me it was to keep Dan away. So
Did you think it was a real gun?
No,
You
I
knew
knew
it was a BB
I knew
gun.
it was a BB gun.
Okay.
Which in certain documentaries and transcripts and stuff like that, some people are like, oh well, she didn't know it was a BB gun. No, I knew it was a BB gun.
Okay.
So
So you didn't think it was going to kill her? Or anything?
no.
Okay.
Hmm.
And when you shot her with it, it was to scare her, or did you think it would kill her?
Oh, no, it was just a scare.
Okay. Did you get out of the wheelchair to shoot her with the BB gun?
I didn't. I stayed in the wheelchair the whole time.
I don't know. In my opinion, speculation. I think she grabbed that in anger and pulled the trigger of it to not just scare her mom. I think she wanted to hurt her mom.
What is the state of the frame of mind for that? Like, I guess
have no idea. It's when you are in a state of being so afraid,
Right.
logic goes out the window.
Right.
So I may have touched on this in the book, where the night of the crime, I was going around the house taking pictures off the wall of me because I thought, well, maybe the police won't know I live here.
Yeah, you said that in the book.
All logic just goes out the window. So in that moment, it was complete survival mode. Nothing made sense. So get out of the wheelchair. Yeah, that didn't cross my mind. It's like, stay in the wheelchair, stay in the wheelchair.
Right.
I'm programmed.
You know what's interesting though about the taking the photos off the wall though and removing them? That to me is a little bit more logical, because you had fallen through the cracks so many times all the way up until that point.
Mm-hmm.
So if you weren't in the home anywhere, I mean, maybe I wouldn't necessarily think you didn't live there, but it wouldn't have made a difference. You know what I mean? So I don't necessarily think that was like illogical.
Okay.
But so you meet Nick online later in 2012 after the second
Here we go.
escape.
Correct.
Attempt, the second escape attempt. And you connected on a Christian dating site.
Yes.
Where was your mom during this time?
So my mom was around the house. We still lived together. She and I had a joint laptop that we would share together. And electronics was difficult for her to let me be on.
Right.
Because of what happened in the past.
Right.
So, electronics was just something that was definitely a hot button issue.
Right.
So I mean, there was a,
Which honestly is in a lot of households, especially with early teenagers. Because even with me, if I had to do research on the computer for homework, my mom would be sitting right there next to me. For the longest time, it was like that until I was older and she could trust, that I'm just going to strictly use the internet for the right things and appropriate things. But at some point as a teenager, you want to sneak and see and look at what, your parents are telling you to stay away from. It is what it is.
a little bit of manipulation on my part, and I am not, too good to own up to that, where I did manipulate the situation where my mom didn't know that I was on Facebook. But
how did you hide it?
By switching tabs.
And she didn't know any different.
She didn't know any different.
I mean, to be fair, in a situation like that, whether you're in an abusive relationship with your parent or not, everyone was doing that, right? Like, I was doing that. If I had access to a computer, I was going to do whatever I could to get on it and go on AIM and whatever else I could do. You know what I mean? So
I will say there was a computer in our garage. I know it sounds weird. We had one in the basement, we had one upstairs, and then there was one in the garage that really didn't have many programs on it. It was for, just like typing in things about, I just did this to the car, keeping records. And I remember sneaking on that because it was the furthest away from the bedrooms. And the noise the AOL and internet connections would try to make, oh my God, it was bad because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to wake up my parents. They're going to hear me.
Hide the tab button or whatever.
That, I think, comes with some adolescence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, some immaturity there.
But so, how did you know about like a dating site?
I seen a commercial for it on TV.
Yeah.
It was like Christian Mingle or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my logic was,
Very
a Christian
popular
guy would
back
be
then.
like a good guy.
And little did you know you were going to get the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Wow. The things that I learned in this book about Nick was insane.
Which I don't think it's right that she's writing about Nick. He is a living person and he's behind bars for a crime that she pretty much told him to do. Yes, he is his own person, but also, yes, mentally, he has a lot of other issues. I don't think she should be talking or writing about him in a book. I mean, we don't know 100% if everything she claims with him is accurate. That's not fair and that's not right. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but that's how I feel.
What I remember from like the media headlines, documentaries, and things like that was that, you know, you allegedly manipulated someone who possibly was, you know, disabled in some ways. And that was not confirmed or, you know, anything in the book.
Sorry, I keep stopping. But also when it comes to Nick Godejohn, a lot of people are like, well, he wasn't ever diagnosed fully for all the spectrum markers that his family has claimed up to date now. But at that time, they didn't have all the support systems and programs and knowledge that we do now. And all the stuff we have in place with human rights right now. It's sad, but that's the truth. Around this time, a lot of kids that had ADHD and ADD, like I know my age group, we were never diagnosed with that shit. We lived through it. And we were told, oh, that's just life. Oh, you know, you're a child, you're going through changes, blah, 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 blah. Deal with it. And so we did. But I don't think it's really fair because this is just one person, her view on Nicholas, and he can't speak for himself.
But I think that is some of what the public thinks. But right. Based on what I read in this book was that he was already having all types of very, very violent fantasies prior to even meeting you.
Correct. He had those with other ex-girlfriends
who reached out to you,
who reached out to me to warn me that he was like that. And I'm like, oh, it's just, you know, it's a scorned ex-girlfriend. And I just kind of like brushed it off like, oh, right. Whatever. Like they're just talking smack.
And you just ignored it.
I just ignored it.
Did it ever scare you? Did you ever think he was going to do something to you?
I mean, of course, later on in the relationship. But I still was in the mindset like, oh, this person loves me. This person is giving me attention. Like, this person loves me for me.
You can look past the violence at that point. I
could look past it.
So,
or change him.
Right. I mean, that's a big one. I think up until my late 20s, I thought I could change a man. You know what I mean? So
yeah, exactly. I think I romanticized the idea of, you know,
girl, we've all been through that.
My man's savior, just as much as he was mine.
Right.
So it was like the Beauty and the Beast syndrome.
Did he ever know that maybe you thought that he should get help?
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned it. I mean, therapy wasn't really something I was talking about or in at that time.
Right.
But I often expressed that I wish that we could have a normal relationship is Absolutely. What I would call it.
Yeah. But that never happened.
No.
And then
these things were said. Whether or not those case files are released to the public, I'm not sure. But there is a paper trail.
So did that come up in court, like in trial?
It did. It was discussed.
So people could find that if they wanted to.
The prosecutor definitely did.
This was the first time I had read that, so I don't know if there's a little bit of attention on it, you know, in the media, but I was shocked. I couldn't even.
Not a lot of people know about that stuff because what is in a confidential case file, because he is still going through his appeals, so there is a portion of case files that are not out to the public.
Okay.
So, you know, that's why I think a lot of people are just like, okay, it's one-sided. And then, in my opinion, whether it was conscious or not, I feel like maybe we manipulated each other.
Absolutely.
It was mutual.
Right.
Oh.
Right. But I definitely don't want it.
That's a different take from Gypsy. Interesting. I wonder if she's playing really safe right now because she wants this book to take off and do well, but also because she wants to improve her public image right now because it's not doing so well, unfortunately for her.
It to go unsaid that there were definitely fantasies of these things before he even
Prior
met
to
you.
meeting me. Yeah.
And I think that's a misconception.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make that clear for
Yeah.
sure. Quote, Nick told me I'd be a woman if he carved me up with a knife. What does that mean?
He often, talked about fantasy violence.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was more along the lines of fantasizing about what I would let him do to me.
Okay.
In terms of how far would I be willing to go.
And then that would make you a woman.
Right.
Wow. And then you talk about sort of the sexual side of your relationship with Nick and some of the things that you would participate in. Where was Dee Dee during that time?
So a lot of times for certain pornographic photos or videos, if my mom went to Walmart, it was done while she was out of the house or while she was asleep. So
See, she was asexual in talking, texting, sexting. She was sex charged pretty much in this relationship with Nicholas. And it shows in the text messages and conversations and Facebook messages that a lot of the times she also instigated it. Just saying.
I could get out of bed for a few minutes without her noticing.
Right.
Depending on how much she was under influence of Ambien. So
did you have to go to bed when she went to bed?
Yeah, we typically went to bed together. Everything we did together, shower time, bath time, sleep time, like everything was together.
Wow. I don't think that is known though. Like in the book I didn't realize that it was at the same time, but that makes sense because she had to make sure that you're under her
routines was aligned.
Okay. Wow. And then Nick told you at one point that if y'all ever had a daughter together, he would take your daughter's virginity at 13.
Correct. And I broke up with him after he said that. We had a huge argument after that. I broke up with him. I'm like, I'm done. I called him a bunch of names. I was like, I am never going to let you do that.
So she ended things with him on that, but she did not end things with him prior with all the other stuff that she's saying was inappropriate, weird, creepy. I get it. You were young, but at the same time, you could have said no and walked away many a times at this point.